Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, episode 154.
Wireless LAN Professionals is a place to educate, inform, encourage, and entertain those involved in wireless LANs. This Wireless LAN Professionals podcast is an audio manifestation of these goals. Our host is a wireless LAN veteran, consultant, designer, and teacher, Keith Parsons. And now, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals.
DFS channels, how do you design around them today? We have, lots and lots of channels to choose from, but we're kind of stuck in a point where if we don't have the clients supporting the channels, what's the point of adding that extra one? So how do you personally go about designing around DFS channels today?
I generally start off and looking at the client population, seeing what types of clients are out there. I mean, if it's generally basically laptops that are being used most of the time, the newer laptops, then I would go, okay, do some testing, verify that they actually work, and then do a channel plan that includes DFS. But I think 90% of the time I'm still turning off DFS just because not enough clients support it.
So just to clarify before you pass it on there, does that mean you're only doing Uni 1 and Uni 3 channels?
Yep.
So 8 channels?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it depends on the environment, obviously. In the higher capacity scenarios, I absolutely use DFS channels. Lecture hall scenario, the idea being I'm planning for so much capacity that if there is an access point that is on a DFS channel with a client that doesn't support it, well, he'll still be close enough to an access point on a non-DFS channel to still maintain a connection. That's an extremely oversimplified explanation, especially when you start tuning that same environment to make sure that clients can't connect to that neighboring AP with roaming, NARCS, SOP, and stuff like that. So it's a difficult problem. For me, for the highest capacity requirements, I need as many channels as I can get. And in scenarios where there's a lot of classrooms, multiple floors, I just can't not use the DFS channels. But in a scenario where it's maybe a retail space or something where you don't need to use DFS channels, then I don't, for the obvious reason of lack of client support. Hopefully that'll get better. Documenting what clients support what channels is, I think, a good start.
And where might someone find some documentation for that, Mike?
So, yeah, I've been working in the recent weeks on a little project to document exactly that. I just have basically a spreadsheet right now, clients.mikealbano.com, and
say that again slower.
Clients.mikealbano.com. It's basically just a link to a spreadsheet, and I'm working on a tool to randomize the frames so people can share their association request captures that they have, and we can then have links to download those PCAPs so you can look at them for yourself. There's a slew of other information in the association request frames that most people find useful that design wireless LANs. So, yeah, that's about it.
Good, thanks.
I deploy single channel architecture. No.
How do you recover from that? Pass it on to Brian. Just let him answer that.
I'm here all week. I same as everybody is. You got to look at client support and see what channels are supported. If your client's not going to support it, then you've got to change your plan and do things accordingly. Actually, oddly enough, a lot of my deployments lately have been Meraki, which do not support DFS, so it hasn't been a problem lately. But yeah, it's you just got to plan accordingly, and like Mike said, is look at what you've got and see what's going on with your environment. And if the percentage of devices that is going to come into the environment that doesn't support it is a small number, I'll take that risk and deploy the DFS channels for additional capacity because Lord knows you need it in today's high density networks. So you got to take the risk, and hopefully those devices will roam over to 2.4 gigahertz if you have 2.4 enabled, Mr. Aiken back there. But It's all comes down to is risk versus rewards, and then looking at it and seeing you're not going to please everybody, but you got to do your best to please 99% of the clients out there. And if 1% falls through, 1% falls through. Hopefully, it's not the executive's computer.
For us, we're the opposite. So I come at it from the client perspective. So fortunately, our clients do support it. But in the healthcare environment, a lot of clients don't support the DFS channel. So if we're trying to work on modifying a channel plan with a customer or what have you, unfortunately, probably 9 times out of 10, we're not able to take advantage of the DFS channels because there's a medical device out there that's critical or has some use case that doesn't support the DFS channel, so they can't be used.
Okay, next question. Sure. Again, techie question. And this is, you're new CWNEs, which means you've been studying and your wives and others have noticed that you've been studying, hopefully. And I've got people who, when they go, oh, you know wireless? Oh, okay. My cell phone, because it has the word wireless in it, and they see wireless, and there's wireless stores everywhere. What's your take on the difference, and how do you answer people when they say, wireless is cellular and Wi-Fi, what's the difference?
Well, you make an attempt to try to answer that question that they're two completely different things, but you start talking and then you end up starting getting too technical and then you lost them and then they just kind of go away and do whatever they were doing before the cell phone didn't work.
Nice cop-out answer there, Brian.
Yeah, I think it depends on who you're talking to and what the context of the discussion is. I'll usually say Wi-Fi, and they're like, oh, okay, and then I'll say it's for your phones or something. And geez, somebody tweeting about me? Sorry, my phones are going off. Wireless is, I try not to lead with wireless, and if I do, I'll usually say not your cellular calls. I don't want to touch that. I cannot hear you now. Don't ask me again. And yeah, I try to avoid the discussion, honestly. I try not to talk shop anymore outside of work.
Yeah, Wi-Fi is that thing you use in your house. Wireless, that's the AT&Ts and the Verizon. Yeah, it depends who you're talking to, but I just say it's that thing in your house that probably has things hanging off of it that's really ugly that you have in some corner underneath a spider's web of cables. That's Wi-Fi. That's what I do.
I think I haven't run into as bad of a problem as that. Most of the time I seem to be able to get across to people the difference between cellular connection and Wi-Fi by just calling it Wi-Fi. Saying I set up Wi-Fi internet for companies, and that's usually enough.
Well, now that you kind of blew over that question and didn't answer it very well.
Hey, we're experts.
Now for the controversial question that goes along with the same thing. What's your take on LTEU and running LTE over unlicensed frequencies? It's kind of the melding of the cellular technology that you didn't answer, but it's taking over our unlicensed frequencies, kind of like Marriott was stopping. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they shouldn't do it.
What did you say? Don't do it?
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Okay.
Don't do it.
That was easy.
I think the jury's still out on the detriment that it will cause with Wi-Fi. How nice will it play? If you read some of the reports, it's going to be just fine. Everything's going to be okay. But yeah, there's obviously a lot of.
By the way, just to answer that, the reports that you say that are just fine are the same guy who wrote the reports for Global Star using Channel 14 was okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Just put that down.
It kind of goes back to the whole, hey, it's unlicensed, it's fair game. It's, people want to use it for whatever they want to use it for and deal with it. And that's the truth. It's not a frequency set aside for Wi-Fi.
You remember those commercials where they put the egg in the frying pan and said, this is your brain, and then they scrambled it up and said, this is your brain on drugs? Yeah, just don't do it. If I'm gonna pay for a phone that only works maybe 90%, but it's really working like now. Geez, Sam, stop it. If I'm going to pay for service on a phone, I expect it to work, and I just don't foresee it working all that well with everything else that we've got going on, especially considering if they do it in 2.4 with all the interference that everybody does see out there. It's got bad sauce written on it, so don't do it.
Agree, don't do it. It's going to create a whole new set of problems that people are just going to be unhappy with.
Well, I agree with Mike. It is unlicensed. And if we're going to play the same unlicensed rule against you can't jam MiFis, you shouldn't be able to jam LTE. But the issue is LTE doesn't want to play nice. They want to overwrite and take it and then charge for it. So I think it's a slightly different issue, but at the core still is it's unlicensed frequency. And if everything else in unlicensed is the same, unlicensed, LTE isn't. It is using licensed in a kind of a hybrid, and I think that's where it's going to fall apart. Okay, another question for the panel here. This is not meaning to start any religious wars because they're all good. It's what's in your toolbox? What do you take with you when you go on site to solve problems? We're in the business of dealing with Wi-Fi, which my daughter once explained to one of her friends. He works on unseen things, making them work, but you can't really tell because you can't see it. And her friend was just like, yeah, is it like magic? Yeah, it's like magic. We can't see anything we deal with at all. So we have to use some sort of tool to take our human bodies and our human senses and be able to visualize the things that are going on in the air. Thus, without tools, we're kind of blind. So, Brian, what tools do you use?
So for our team, every team member, they have a spectrum analyzer tool, site survey tool. We are using the Air PCAP adapters for packet captures using Wireshark, and every team member also has a link sprinter when they go on site. So, able to go layer 1, layer 2, check cables if we need to, VLANs, all that fun stuff. So every team member has all those tools whenever they go on site.
My two favorite guys are not beating up each other in the back of the room, but there we go. Minigeek, Channelizer, IPA with an Air PCAP NX card, and then Jussi knows I love the Ekahau product. I've used it for a very long time, and I think my discount code is still active. If you put Blake in the shopping cart for North America, get 10% off. But so I love the Ekahau product.
Minor little product plug there.
I get $5 each time I say Ekahau. I've become a fan of the Link Sprinter as well. I think that's something that everybody should have in their bag. It's inexpensive, and man, does that thing work great. I use it to see if I can get on without having to hook up to the wireless. If I can just jack into somebody's network when I'm sitting in their building, it's great. And I think some of this stuff. What? I'm not Jake here. I'm not doing anything bad. And then I do.
What are you implying there about Jake?
I don't want to steal his thunder from his pineapple talk, so just make sure you go listen to his talk. Jake gave me $5 to say that too. And then the other one that I'm a fan of, that I know Keith, you're a big fan of too, is the AirCheck hardware platform. I think that's a great device for consistent readings, consistent data, and being able to just pull it out of the bag and take a quick reading to see what's going on. And yes, I just said a long A.
AirCheck, Channelizer, and I do most of my capturing in OS 10 and reading in Wireshark. OmniPeak is great, but Wireshark is just what I find myself using more. That's it.
How do you, if you're using OS 10, how do you scan channels to get data into Wireshark?
Airport-S.
Sounds like a TED Talk.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you actually have it scanning? Or you switch a channel, go in to capture?
I'll determine what channel I want to capture on first, and
Oh, okay.
And then,
I was hoping you had some magic answer to make it automatically scan through channels. That'd be cool.
no, I don't, but that's a good idea.
Yeah. I'm still looking. Anybody has the idea?
I'll work on that.
We'll take that.
I think for me, it very much depends on the situation as to exactly what I'm got in my bag at any time. As a company, we standardized on the Magnet suite of tools, Spectrum XT, Site Survey, and the Wi-Fi Analyzer. I've been looking rather heavily at the Ekahau tool, mostly due to experience in both Wireless Tech Field Day and with this conference. So I've been considering whether, as a company, we might move over to that platform. I've been using a lot recently, and that's specifically from my experiences with Wireless Tech Field Day, was looking at the OmniPeak tool and using that. And I had a problem with the packet capture analyzer because I had a ear cap adapter to use with that, but it was only a BG one, I believe, and would not even do in. So when they brought out the remote capture tool that could work with OS 10 and the being able to do packet captures directly from OS 10 into OmniPeak, I found that was really, really useful. I've used Wireshark quite a lot for packet captures. Just for general analysis, I think my go-to tool is probably Wi-Fi Analyzer, just being able to open it up quickly and take a scan of what's going on in the network, get a good idea of what's going on. I've used the MetaGeek tools quite a lot as well, because I like to be able to use several different types of tools to assess what's going on in the environment when I'm trying to track down what a problem is.
Good, thanks. Part of the reason for your big goodie bags that you got is so you would have a chance to play with these tools on an extended evaluation and pick one. Notice they're all CWNEs. They basically, other than Link Sprinter, they're kind of using them all. There's lots of tools available for you to use, and you have access to them now. The issue is you just have to kind of do it. Get started and practice with them. By the way, we do have quite a few Link Sprinters to give away for if you're here. We'll take care of that. Now, where's that little catch box? Who has a question for these guys? Yes, go ahead.
I just have one more thing to comment on in terms of tools. For a long time, we used the LAN Planner tool from Motorola, and that I still think it's the gold standard for predictive site survey tools. It really, really does a good job, but unfortunately, Motorola just let it go. And it's not even supporting most of the 802.11n APs, let alone the ACE APs that are out there, which is really unfortunate because I still think it's a really good product, and if they just spend some time working on it and updating it and bringing it up to date, it would be a really good tool.
Anyone else agree with that?
One more tool that we use all the time too, again, coming from the client side, is we use the access agility tools, the iPerf tools. They're awesome. So
where's Zabe? Adrian. Where's Adrian? I was just going to mention when someone said their tools, that new advanced details on Wi-Fi Explorer, little scanner tool, but I can go and see what's in the header of the beacon without even opening up Wireshark. It's like so fast. So if you're OS 10, that's a nice tool. Okay, time's open for discussion. Trent, throw that to someone. There's a question over there. Oh, nicely done, Trent. I picked the right person.
So I'm halfway.
Flip it around. The mic's on the other end. Never mind, you had it right.
So I'm halfway to my CWNE and studying for the CWDP. The one that I'm worried about is the WAP. So you had mentioned capture everything, but I'm interested from the rest of you what you did to specifically prepare for the WAP, because that seems like the most difficult test of all of them.
Hey, Robert, stand up.
Yeah, where's Robert?
Robert Bartz, right there.
Talk to this guy.
Go to his boot camp. He makes it seem logical, because when you read through it, it's gibberish. If you read through it with whiskey like Sam does, it's still gibberish. If you go talk to Robert, he'll explain it to you in terms that make sense and definitely helps out. I walked into that test, I read the book once before the boot camp, because that's what he kind of suggested, and then showed up on what was it, Monday for the boot camp, and then Friday took the test and passed, and I was happy.
Thank you.
Actually, a lot of people say, you know, what order? I'm a firm believer that it's CWNA, CWAP's next. Get your AP out of the way, because the knowledge of how the packets work will help you get the other ones really easy. So and I don't even say it's the hard one. Do the fun one first, because once you understand how those packets work, and Brian, I mean, that's when you find the answers, is when you understand what the packets are doing. So good luck on your thing. Anybody else want the mic?
Yeah, just to add to that, that was my favorite one, the CWAP, and that's the order I did them in, NA, then AP. Yeah, capture and look at every element in those frames, and then if you don't know what it is, look it up, and don't stop until you figure it out.
Another question? Sam wants it back here. He just wants to throw it, I think. So. It's all your fault, Sam.
Sam, you only get one question for the day.
I'll make it an easy one. If you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
The question was, if you had it to do over again, what would you do differently?
I would do it in the appropriate order, and I would not do it as a gauntlet style. I ran it as CWDP, CWSP, CWAP because I had vouchers from George for the DP and the SP, so I took those ones first, but I definitely felt, like Keith said, the AP is what sets the framework for everything, and you keep referencing that through the DP and through the SP. And even the AP, when you read it, they're like, you're gonna learn about this further down the line when you go to read the DP or when you go to read the SP. So I would definitely do it the appropriate order by what most people think, and I would not have ran the gauntlet. I don't recommend doing the studying from 9 p.m. until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, some days not even going to sleep, but just starting the workday back up again. What I'm finding on it, especially on the AP, is that it's not the book that you go and you read and pass the test and you say, okay, I'm done, bye, I see you later. It's the book that you go back to and you keep reading and you keep reading and you keep reading, because you're going to find things every time you read it.
What I would have done differently is take a class for the, particularly for the AP, because that's really it's such a hands-on. You want to dig into it and, practice troubleshooting specific problems by looking at packets and frames. For me, it was just all self-studied, so I probably would have found more value out of if I would have taken the class for that one specifically.
Yeah, I agree with the other people. I think I would do the AP first. I did the SP first because I thought it would be the easiest one for me to knock out, and it was. But actually, I ended up with a higher passing score on the AP mainly due to Robert's class. I spent a long time going through the book in detail, looking at lots and lots of packet captures. But really, the thing that drew that all together for me and allowed me to focus in on what I needed to know to pass the exam was doing the CWAP class.
Thanks. I think Brian.
One of the other things with AP too, because I didn't pass it the first time, I passed it the second time. One of the things I did differently the second time around was when I was doing captures, I focused more directly with having the standard right with me. So kind of going through the elements and everything directly out of the standard in conjunction with the book. And I found that really helped out a lot as well.
I'll do a little mea culpa here. I've got way too many certifications. My wife thinks it's silly that I collect TLAs and FLAs, but it's kind of my hobby, so I have way too many. Out of the 80 or 90 tests I've taken, I've failed half of them. Gladly. So how many of you failed at least one of your tests? Okay? And the reason I wanted to do that is don't feel bad. That's just what happens. You go in, and I know it costs money, but sometimes you can get the 2-for-1 voucher deal. But that's life. So don't freak out that you didn't pass every one of your tests on the first time. Note, every one of these CWNEs here has. All of you who are CWNEs, how many of you failed at least one test? Okay, look around the room. That's what's normal. So don't let that kind of mess with your head at all. Realize that it's okay.
Yeah, I would say that I sometimes actually deliberately go and do a test before I know I'm ready, just so I can figure out what the test is like. And for me, with the AP especially, I was doing lots of trying to memorize the AP stuff. And when I got into the exam, I'm like, oh, it's not about memorizing, it's about how wireless works.
Oh, I like that. That's a great quote. It's about understanding how wireless works. Yeah.
One comment on the passing, not passing. Sam told me this, and it was good advice and kind of helped me out. Is when I passed the DP, I called him, of course. So I texted him, said I'm on my way to take the test. He's like, well, text me when you get out. So I called him. He's like, did you pass? I go, yeah, but I only got a 76%. I'm like, I thought that was bad. I'm like, how did I get such a low score when I just busted my butt studying nonstop, not getting sleep or anything? And Sam's point was that it's not meant to get 90% and higher scores on. It's a tough exam track. All of them are. A passing score is an average passing score, which is perfectly acceptable. If we were all getting 90%, the test is too easy. It's not testing the right things. So if you go through it, and as you pass and as you see your score report, be glad that you passed first of all and that you can move on to the next step. But then don't fret that if you spent so much time on it and you didn't get that 80%, 90%, or 100%, whatever you're going for, it doesn't mean you don't know the material. It just means that you did work hard enough to pass the test, you have the base understanding of it, and then some.
Good. I totally agree with what Blake says there. If the passing score is 72 and I get a 72, I am really successful. If I get an 80 and the passing score is 72, I wasted a whole lot of time studying that I didn't need to. That was inefficient use of my time. So kind of like what Chris said here, I will go take a test up front and know I'm going to fail it, because you walk in going, I didn't study, I'm going to fail it. But you get a whole lot of information about what you need in that exam and what you need to study and not study. Now, for those like Robert Bartz who want to be CWNTs, there's a higher place you need to be. And as you'd expect, if you want to go and train on the course, you should have a higher standard. So CWNT training has a higher passing score. You still pass, but you don't pass at that level. Okay, and the last little bit before we finish up, the last couple minutes, a parting thought of you have 150 other wireless professionals. It's your chance now. Tell us, Brian, what advice would you give them? Anything you want.
Stay active in the community. One of the best things that happened was getting on social media and getting involved with Twitter and meeting a lot of the people that I met here was originally through social media. And there's definitely right ways and wrong ways to do social media, but the wireless community definitely does it right. There's so much information out there and so many great professionals to learn from. Get active. You can start out just small. It doesn't have to be, a big, huge thing, but start watching, start reading, start figuring out and learning from your experiences and sharing them with others. It's not about, failing or doing something wrong. It's more about learning. And we all learn through failures. And so get out there, be active, and continue your education and never stop learning.
Yeah, I'll echo what Brian said, but also I'll look back to the CWAP class that Eddie and I were in with Robert, and one of the other students in the class said he wasn't necessarily looking to go towards the CWNE. He didn't even really realize that there was a test after it, and he took it, and from what I hear, he passed, and I'm happy because he learned the knowledge on it. But he asked about the endorsee side of the application. How do I find endorsements and somebody that's going to give me a positive recommendation for the program? And I think that's something that I looked at very early on, and I made sure that the people that I got involved with, like Keith, like Devin, those are the people that I could then go to and say, hey, I'm ready for this. I'd really appreciate your endorsements. Here's how I progressed through my career path and how I've gone through it. And Devin helped me out a lot on my application, and I appreciate it. And thank you so much for that. And I think that's important, is that you reach out to somebody who is a CWNE already and work with them. I think I can safely say all of us in this room that are CWNEs will gladly mentor anybody that wants to learn this.
Actually, every CWNE in the room, please stand up so everyone can see you. Sit down if you aren't willing to help someone. So, and I'm sure the four up here are with it. So there's people around you right now who are more than willing to help you on your path and also do that endorsement. Now, legally on the application today, it is not required to have a CWNE be your endorser. Being part of the group that actually evaluates those, when we see a CWNE, it's a big step up. So plan on getting at least one CWNE to endorse you along the way. It would help a lot.
Yeah.
Great point, Blake.
Just make friends with us. We are friendly, except for Sam. Give him whiskey, then he's friendly.
Sam's a little too friendly.
I love you, Sam.
Being active in social networking and whatnot, and in the community in general is a good thing. Just don't. And another thing is, you can't be scared to look dumb. I started a CWNE Google Plus community group thing just to post questions and get answers. And I think if I go look back at it now, I would probably reread my questions and be like, oh, well, you look dumb. That's an easy one. But you just sort of got to put yourself out there, and it helps those that answer the questions. It sort of makes them check themselves as well, right? So I think it's great for everybody. Just go for it.
I would say, I think in terms of general advice, there's a lot of opportunity out there. If you're wanting to advance your career, advance your job, there's a lot of companies who are really looking for good wireless professionals. And being in a position in my company where I get to evaluate everybody who comes in that wants to be part of the wireless team, it's really, really hard to find good people. And I would say if you're thinking of moving on at all, really, there's lots and lots of really good companies to work for.
Okay. Well, thanks to our CWNEs up here. Appreciate that.
Tools review.
In this section, we're talking about some of the pieces that we have in the Wireless LAN Professionals Notebook and why they're there and kind of how you can use them. The back 2 pages, and it basically works out to be 4 sides, is whiteboard paper. So many times we need a little whiteboard and we don't have one with us. These pages are kind of stiff cardstock with lamination on them, specifically made to use whiteboard markers. You can use regular whiteboard markers, obviously not the big fat ones you're going to use on a big board, but you can get thinner pointed ones. The ones we included the pens we included at WLPC were a special wet board marker, as in they go on wet, they dry, but they can't rub off like a regular dry erase marker would. You can use both. I've tried both wet and dry. I've a tendency now to use the wet ones that they stick and it stays on the page until you get like a tissue or a wet cloth and you can wipe it off. So it's still totally reusable as a whiteboard. When you split it open and you have 2 pages in front of you, you have quite a lot of working space to do that. I've used them with customers drawing out their floor plan. We might put their floor plan in with the wet board marker so it's fixed, and then I use a dry board marker on top, and then we can wipe it off with just a dry cloth and change it out, and the floor plan stays there consistently underneath. So we added these in here just so you'd have a sample whiteboard with you at all times. Thanks.
10 Talks.
All right, it's an interesting spot to be in. We're about to head for lunch, and I'm after Lee and Veli-Pekka, who did both Wi-Fi and actually knew what they were talking about, and this is going to be neither. So I apologize in advance for that. So the topic is an engineer's mind and body, and disclaimer, even though my parents are doctors, I'm not. So take everything, I don't really know, again, what I'm talking about, but this is just based on my experiences. And you may say I'm not even an engineer. I'm not a CWNE. I have no certifications whatsoever. So you call me an engineer or not, I still feel I have the problem-solving type of a mindset. So certificates or not, in this case, not. Okay, so part 1, mind. So an engineer's mind, I feel, is built in a specific day. So our brain gets worked a lot, and that's a good thing. Otherwise, we wouldn't have conferences like this, and we wouldn't be solving really, really complex problems, and we wouldn't be listening to Veli-Pekka. So we are this constantly thinking, problem-solving brain, and that's in the frontal part of the brain, and it's being consumed a lot, and that's a good thing. But it can also be a bad thing. So it can lead to stuff like anxiety, depression, you name it. If you don't know that, there's a few tricks that you can do to avoid them. So how do we avoid, overworking our brain? And I'm sure all of you have your methods for this. I'm just going to present a few that I found pretty useful. And the first one is minimize the number of interruptions. So whether they are computer-based or human-based. So I like to, for example, at times when I want to focus, I keep my office door closed. People go around the office and they just come there to say hello. But if you have 100 people in your office and everybody comes and says hello during the day, it just doesn't work. And then there's the computer-based interruptions. So even though I have Android Wear and whatnot, it's still, I minimize the number of interruptions. Email, who gives a damn if I get email or not? That's a standard. There's email coming and going all the time, and Twitter notifications and stuff like that. it doesn't provide value, but it just interrupts you constantly. So what I found useful is minimize the amount of interruptions. I don't get Skype notifications. I don't get Outlook notifications, Twitter, stuff like that. So if you're wondering why I don't answer my emails that quickly or Twitter, it's because of this. Also, I try to minimize the use of email altogether. I'm not really good at that. But for example, all my colleagues and people who work for my team, they know absolutely never send me email unless it's specifically for me and it has an action that I need to do. Otherwise, even if they take the ball on some topic and they need to notify me that they've taken it, they BCC me so that I'm no longer in that discussion. So I don't need to go through those emails. And then obviously you need to relax. We like to, at least I like to think about the problematics at work even in my free time, but at times, you need to force, if you can't relax otherwise, you need to force yourself to. And this is a good way to do it. Meditation, how many of you do mindfulness meditation, stuff like that? A few. It's really, really good. And there's an app for that called Headspace. It's incredibly good. It guides you through. It's really good for beginners. I really recommend checking it out. Headspace plus Bose headphones. It's a really killer combination. Anybody used Headspace? How do you like it, Trent? Rocks. Trent uses it, guys. Seriously. Consider it. Obviously, watching comedy, studies show it has a pretty good effect on relaxation, stress relief, stuff like that. Listening to music and playing music as well, and spending time with loved ones. This, to those of you who have kids, this kind of comes automatically, or a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatnot. Being outdoors, stuff like that. So that's kind of some useful ways to relax the mind. But then there's the body component of an engineer. So this is pretty bad. So those of us who are not surveying actually sit down a lot. So, 10 hours a day, 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day, we are sitting down. And that can be a bit of a problem because we are not designed to be sitting down. We are the first or second generation that's doing that. Before that, for a few million years, we were walking, we were hunting, we were gathering. We were not sitting down 8 hours a day. So our bodies are not built for that. It's actually pretty harmful, and there's few bullet points about the harms of sitting. And that's why you see me, for example, standing there at the back quite often. It's not because I'm ignoring your presentation, I'm still listening, but I was at Cisco doing the CCNA, CCNP training blueprints for the forthcoming ones, or the ones that you're starting to see now. I was doing that stuff with Cisco for a week in Raleigh in the summer, and I started having enormous pain in my buttocks, literally. And it wasn't because of the content. It was a super exciting week, but we were sitting 12 hours a day in really crappy chairs. You would think they charge an arm and a leg for an AP that they would, get decent chairs, but they didn't. But I love Cisco, and it was a great week, but I was hospitalized after that. My vacation started. I had so much pain in my buttock that I was hospitalized and got really strong pain medicine and shit, and stuff. And spent half of my vacation, not being able to move. And it was because of excessive sitting. And once I stopped that and started doing some exercises, it went away. But again, case in point, avoid sitting when you can. So, there's things like, this has gotten a bit crazy, right? I'm all for standing desks. I have one, so it's a motorized desk, so you can, get it up and down during the day. Whenever you don't want to stand, you can sit down, and that's no problem. But as long as you're moving at times and you're not sitting all the time, that's the point. And now there's the craziness of the treadmills and stuff with the desks. That may work for some, but it would never work for me. Anybody have a treadmill workstation? No? Okay, yeah. Google that, YouTube that if you want. There's some funny stuff there. Obviously, exercise is good. And there's different ways to do it, but you can combine. The point of this slide is, and you're like, what's the skinny guy talking us about the exercise? Well, so in the last 3 years, if it makes you feel better, in the last 3 years, I gained 35 pounds, and now I'm on my way to losing them again, but it's a problem for me too. So what I found good is these engineering gadgets that go with that. So things like, why things scale. So you just take out the scale from under your bed, hop on it, and it automatically, it's the IoT phenomenon Devin has been waiting for. Now it's reality, the scale. So you hop on the scale, and over Wi-Fi, it updates everything to the web, and you see dashboards of your well-being and weight, and it measures your pulse and your CO2 levels in your bedroom and whatnot. So it's pretty convenient, and you don't have to do anything except hop on the scale once a day. So it's really powerful. Also, the watches today, and the health craze. So you can combine some of the geeky gadgetry and the exercise well-being part of things. So here's an example just to motivate myself. Here's my results from a couple of weeks ago. There's a device called InBody. I don't know if it's marketed in the same way in the US. It's like a $30,000 device. I don't own one, but my friend does. And you step on it, and it measures not just your weight and your body fat really accurately, but it actually measures your arms separately, your legs separately. And the fat that's, not just the fat that's around your waist here, but also the fat that's pushing against your organs. I don't know what it is in English, but that's kind of even more important. So you may look pretty slim, but there might be internal fat in your body pushing against your organs, and that's the dilemma. You can be sick of being fat without being overweight or fat. So I don't have a lot of time left, probably -2 minutes. Sorry about that. The lunch is getting cold, so you're good to go. But so just a couple of words about the diet. So obviously the Western diet is a bit of a problem. And the bad guy in this story is not actually, based on what I've read, is not actually fat, it's sugar. And you want to check out this book. It's awesome. There's also by the same guy has done a documentary. If you're not into reading, it's not called Fat Chance, but if you Google the guy, you'll find it. It's on iTunes, and it's really, really good. So just avoiding white sugar makes sense, but of course you need sugar in some form. So rather, don't drink juices, avoid white sugar, and eat whole fruits and stuff like that. That's probably a bit better, because then you get the fiber, which is designed to kind of work with the sugar in combination, so that your liver doesn't get to work overtime, and you don't get type 2 diabetes, stuff like that. Obviously, carbs, we eat a lot of them, and if you look at the average, Holiday Inn breakfast table, it's horrible. So there's no way to avoid that. Not that Hyatt has provided us the best experience either. Then another case study real quickly. So I've had stomach problems, and I went to see this guy who isn't a Western medicine guy. Western medicine is like, okay, take a pill and it'll fix it. But Google functional medicine or functional healthcare, and these guys kind of proactively try to change your life to avoid the problem. So I actually stopped eating certain things and got better, but it was never tested as an allergy, because the stuff that you put the spikes on your skin, it only tests for immediate allergies. But there's this thing called delayed allergies that may show up in your guts only a couple of days after you've eaten the food, and it usually turns out as stomach problems or stuff like that. So just FYI. So point being, if you have any self-discipline, there's a lot of methods for losing weight, for example, and it's really an engineering problem, but it's not a calories in, calories out, like they used to say in the 80s. It's a bit different. To learn more, 3 suggestions for you guys. The 4-Hour Body. Keith thinks this guy is a cheat. I think this guy does a pretty good job at experimenting on himself what actually works. His name is Tim Ferriss. How many of you have heard or read Tim Ferriss's stuff? Many of you. I think he has pretty good stuff. Some of it is overhyped, but check this stuff out if you are interested in learning more. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @Wireless LAN Pros for all the latest news and updates, and also connect directly with Keith on Twitter @KeithRParsons. Head over to www.wlanpros.com for this episode's show notes, as well as the latest in all things Wi-Fi.